All right, so I've been thinking more about this Roald Dahl censorship, which I made a previous video about. I will link to that. You may have seen it if you're a subscriber, which, you should maybe be a subscriber. Just kidding. But no, I've been thinking more about Roald Dahl being censored, being rewritten by sensitivity experts, sensitivity readers. And a couple more thoughts I wanted to add to this. First of all, did you know that the Roald Dahl estate, the Roald Dahl Story Company, which is run by the author's grandson, sold the rights to all of his children's literature to Netflix in 2021, and as part of this deal, the estate of Roald Dahl became a division of Netflix. Not just the rights, you see, but a division of Netflix. So, in other words, this rewriting of the books is not just the estate, the publisher, and this inclusive minds group of sensitivity readers. It's also Netflix. Netflix is part of this. And I don't know the details there, who sparked this conversation or what's going on behind the scenes. But it's sort of interesting, isn't it, that Netflix acquires the Roald Dahl estate and all the rights to the literature, the children's literature that Roald Dahl wrote. And now, just barely over a year later, that the books are being rewritten to take out offensive material that modern audiences may be triggered by or whatever. It just seems awfully coincidental to me. So, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, The Witches was made into a live action movie recently, and a lot of people got really butthurt about the fact that the witches had like 4 fingers and were bald and stuff. Like a lot of these very sensitive people who think this is an assault on the disabled community. It's crazy, right? These are witches. They're not being portrayed as like bad because they have 4 fingers. They're bad because they're witches who want to kill children. Just throwing that out there. But maybe Netflix looked at this. Maybe the powers that be in all these organizations looked at this and thought, oh my, we are entering a time when if we have these things in our adaptations, in our books, in our movies, and if we have people calling people fat and ugly, we might lose money. We might have people complaining. We might face boycotts, etc., etc. We should change them. And then you have the defenders of this saying, well, Roald Dahl made changes to his books. He made changes during his lifetime. Originally the Oompa Loompas were African pygmies, and it was a very racist caricature of black people, and Dahl changed that. And I say, good for him. And if that was the case, honestly, if that was what was being changed, a really, really, obvious racist caricature, and that was all that was being changed, I might not even care that much. And maybe that makes me unprincipled or whatever, but I get that. Maybe that's trying to preserve Dahl's reputation a little bit, and they don't want him to come across as this horrible racist. But I'm glad it was changed during his lifetime because that's better. The things that are being changed now, making cloud giants, cloud men, cloud people, and taking out ugly and stuff like that, when it describes like bad guys for one thing, oftentimes, that is another story. That seems like we've gone way too far. We're not taking out a very clear and pretty much universally agreed upon racist caricature and making them, just less awful. We're taking out words that honestly are just not that big of a deal. And of course, you can go even further. You can say, well, if Roald Dahl was dead, we shouldn't take out the African pygmies, even if that hadn't been changed before. I think there's an argument for that, saying, well, we shouldn't work to preserve the legacy of Roald Dahl by whitewashing things that were in his books that make him look bad, because that's who he was, and we shouldn't whitewash the past. Okay, I don't think that's a bad argument at all. The other argument I wanted to make, however, is a little bit different. These are kids' books, right? And the people, the meddlers, the censors, the scolds, the bullies, the sensitivity readers, the people that are concerned with this stuff, that are very, very worried that this will trigger people and offend people, are adults. And the logic here, at least the expressed logic, the deeper logic, of course, is this business. This is business. But the expressed logic, the reasoning, the excuse, is that we don't want to offend people. We don't want to offend fat kids and ugly kids, right? We don't want to offend kids. We don't want kids to be exposed to all this nastiness. We're doing it for the children, of course, aren't we always? And I just would posit, I would argue that kids are going to be mean to each other no matter how much we sanitize the art and literature and video games and movies that they watch. This is just human nature. You can't fix human nature. It doesn't work. We've never been able to do it. For thousands of years, we've not been able to fix human nature. Actually, one way that we generally can help people be better human beings is to encourage them to read more. I think if people read more, just in general, if people read more books, if kids grew up reading more books, including the books of Roald Dahl, I think we would have a better culture. A culture that was more empathetic, more imaginative, more curious. Even if many of these books expose readers to, controversial things, to dangerous ideas. To me, it seems that the only people who want kids or anyone to read less or to read less controversial or dangerous ideas are censors who want to have some form of control. Maybe not control in the traditional sense. Maybe they don't want to be the dictator of the world. But maybe they just like to have their little small corner of power, their little pocket, their little enclave of power, where they get to say what we get to read, what we get to do. And it's to me, that exposes them as frauds, because you take out the words fat and ugly from these books, kids are still going to call each other fat and ugly. They're going to learn that from other kids, from the grown-ups in their lives even. Now, let's say you could erase these words from the English language entirely. Well, language is not that easy to control. I mean, we see, dystopian versions of our world where, like in 1984 by George Orwell, where there's newspeak and words have been eliminated, right? Bad words have been eliminated, and words that are dangerous so that people aren't exposed to those words and those ideas that those words contain. But realistically, I've never really bought 1984. I haven't bought a copy of it, but I haven't bought the premise that much. Not because I don't think it's a good warning, but because I don't think language is that easily controlled. I think that language is a basic component of freedom, and that the more we try to quash it down and control it, the more ways it sort of just seeps through the cracks. I don't think it's realistic to think that we can go out and eliminate the word ugly, because somebody's just going to come up with another word for ugly. Maybe a whole bunch of words. Maybe you try to get rid of one word and 5 new words to describe ugly will pop up. If there's no more "your mama's so fat" jokes, there's going to be something else about your mama, right? That's just going to happen. That's human nature. And you can't control it. And you should stop trying. What you can do, I think, personally, is you can do positive things to make the world a better place. You don't try to control people. You don't try to take away freedom. You don't try to censor these books. Certainly, you don't try to ban books from school libraries. How many times has Mark Twain been banned because it has the N-word in it? Well, too many times. You shouldn't ban books. You shouldn't censor, rewrite books. What you can do instead is you can encourage kids to read. You can encourage, you can take positive steps to create a world that is better for everyone, including poor people, especially poor people. And this is where my lefty side comes out, right? Because I think if you provide if there's a world where shelter, healthcare, food, basic necessities are taken care of, and nobody starves, we try to house the homeless, not in tent cities, but in actual houses. You try to provide free education for everybody. And it doesn't always have to be the same education. Not everybody's going to become a lawyer or a doctor. Sometimes education means teaching people how to be mechanics. whatever. But these things, you take care of these things, and you take a positive approach to making the world a better place instead of a negative approach where everything is censored, where everything is shut down, where everyone is canceled, where everyone is driven underground, where bad ideas are just simply not talked about instead of debated in the public sphere, right? So that's my personal take. And this Roald Dahl stuff just makes me think about all these other things and how we've gotten to this place as a society where our answer to bad stuff happening or to dangerous ideas or to any of these things that are maybe triggering or offensive is to shut it down. And instead we should be talking about it. And not in terms of like, this is bad and so it must be erased. Right? Tell me why. Tell me why it's bad. Tell me why you react that way to it. When you read this passage in Roald Dahl, why are you offended by it? And why not this other passage that seems equally offensive, quite frankly, right? Like you can take out ugly, but you don't take out beastly. I mean, beastly's pretty offensive. Offensive. Why is that? Again, if we just say, well, it's offensive, it's triggering, and it must be stopped, we never really interrogate the reasons why. You know, why is something offensive bad? I mean, certainly, okay, for instance, I just read a book called Tell No One by Harlan Coben. It's a thriller, mystery. Reading this book, I thought that certain elements of the mystery and the plot twists and the breadcrumbs and all that stuff was very good. And it was a page turner, right? I don't think he's the best writer ever, but I definitely enjoyed some of the twisty-turny stuff in this mystery, which I won't spoil for you. But then there's all these characters in there that are black. And I think he does a terrible job of writing these characters. They're all sort of stereotypical ghetto characters, like every black character in this book. And it's really cringy. Like reading it, I was like, oh boy, like, dude, you should not write black characters because it's bad. I mean, it's really bad. But I don't want to go back and censor that book. I want to talk about, let's talk about it. Let's have our book group discuss why these portrayals of black characters, why these stereotypes are not good, are not realistic, or are stereotypes. Why stereotypes are bad. Maybe not harmful. I don't think anyone's been harmed by this book, but perpetuating negative stereotypes is not good writing, for one thing. So yes, discussion rather than shutting everything down, I think is a better path forward. Positive steps toward creating a better world, including encouraging people to read books that have offensive stuff in them so that we can talk about it. And ultimately, just clamping down on all this stuff, trying to erase these things, won't change anything in the real world. Kids are still going to be shitty to each other on the school bus. Bullies are still going to pick on the weak kids. If you're worried about that, send your kids to martial arts. Teach them how to fight, because that's one way. That is one way to fight back against bullies. And encourage them to read books. I mean, and that's not always easy. I mean, I'm a huge reader, but my kids, it's like twisting their arms sometimes. They want to be on TikTok and play video games. It's a challenge. It's a struggle to get kids to read these days, but it's important. It's very important. So, anyways, that is my 2 cents. Thank you so much for watching. I'm making this video before a big storm rolls in. There's going to be more snow in this mountain town, and winds between 60 and 90 miles per hour is what I hear. So I'm very likely going to lose power tonight. Who knows? They've already canceled the university, the public schools. Everything's canceled for tomorrow, even though it's still sunny out, kind of sunny. I woke up this morning also with like a raging headache. It felt like I had a hangover, even though I don't drink anymore. I got the hangover without the drinking. So something's in the air, man. There's something going on. I don't know what it is, but it's creeping me out, man. All right. Thanks for watching. Peace and love. And I'll see you next time.